There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Next we'll move on to item number 3, consideration and approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Dan,
I'll second.
second by Kyle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move on to new business, item number 4.1, discussion on bold agreements with the city of Pinson.
You got my email?
Did that on the drive here.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes, it worked.
And then also it was mentioned to bring up, the library. So I did get, this from the library. Should have made a copy here. This is the library count. They're saying that there were 26,195 visits in the year to the library.
Wow.
Then I asked, the
Eight.
it would be for the last 12 months.
Oh, okay.
And then I asked the county to do, because they have this AI placer that we actually partially pay for, well, through the EDA HRA. So she had to kind of, because it was including the pub in the foot traffic, so she had to work it to be more specific, and hers for the last 12 months were 11,000.
So pretty hefty discrepancy.
So it's kind of fun to have the two sets of numbers. So their sheet shows like the different uses, like the computer usage, internet, kids participation, but then the visits they had at the 26,000 plus, and then the county came back with the 11,000.
Is it for the same time period or was that?
Same 12 months.
Okay.
Mhm.
Placker also tracks differently than the library does.
I
For
do
sure.
not know what is being used to track these numbers.
Because Placker uses cell phone and credit card data. Correct, that's how they.
Yes.
So
Yes,
there could be a number of users.
who
that use the
don't,
library.
grandma and grandpa, who didn't
Especially
have a phone.
children.
People that are there to use the.
That's a
computer.
very valid point.
Is that counting the people driving up with their cars, sitting in their car?
If they had their phone with them, yes.
So they could be picking up the Wi-Fi in the park
Oh,
Well,
and being coded in there.
well, this geocaching though is just, if you're even passing through, they catch it on this with you, right? Your phone
What is,
or pings, I think.
what is the number on the, like you said, it was broken down by computer usage,
Mhm.
book usage?
So, the public Wi-Fi sessions, there was 2,260 Wi-Fis. The programs, attendees was just shy of 1,400. The, participants in the passive programs, do you know what that means?
It would be, think like Pine City Reads, or, they have like Friends of the Library, different, like they've done fundraisers.
I think it would count like today's morning Larry and Bob thing we had today.
No, but anything like that had to do with the library.
Okay, special presentations, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the meeting room uses, they have 188. And then public computer sessions, 2,084. And they were saying their numbers are all up this year.
the meeting, 188, is that, because like,
Room reservations,
okay, like on Fridays, they had, or,
story time.
yeah, story time, yeah,
They count that as a meeting usage because they get to
Just one,
bring those numbers in.
that doesn't count the people,
Correct.
because when I've gone there, there's probably 40, 30 or 40.
But that would be considered there's 82 programs at the library and they've had just shy of 1,400 attendance.
Okay.
What did you say was for you said participants, something participants?
So all the community libraries are tracked the same through East Central Regional.
Yep.
Yeah. I was just telling Marcy, we do a lot. So I have a client that, when I got with her, she was sleeping all day, every day. And she was on probation, no money, nothing to do. So we started going to libraries. She started using the computers at the libraries and checking out books. I didn't even know she could read. So she can read. And 4 years later, girl has a job, 3 days a week, is earning money, buying her own, still goes to the library once in a while, but libraries were just this beautiful free access for someone like her that had nothing. No, there was nothing to look forward to in the day. She didn't have any way to get money. She didn't have any friends, She has a lot of barriers to all those things, but it was kind of nice to have some of these. And so we've been to all the libraries, and I really like the way Cambridge Library feels. There's like this art and music room when you first start walking up, and then they have a big vestibule in a classroom that's always got some DNR or something happening in there. And it's the library, and then the kids programs are in the back corner, and then the back has these little offices, but it's just a big, our library feels a little more traditional, with just the library. But
It's a pretty building.
yeah, but it's still. That one's just been redone. They did a trade with the state of Minnesota, so state of Minnesota took over the library and they took over this. What was this? This was something else and they turned it into the library. So they did some kind of swap.
As opposed to,
I don't know, I can't remember. It was something. So they just, and then the downstairs is just a big wide open space. And we do a lot of trainings down there in that space because they're blocked from the state of Minnesota building.
Yep. it's
And
good.
those buildings are always full too.
So I was the one who asked for this information, and I think we do need a library in town, so don't get this out of context. But the usage, you have the 26,000, and then at the highest is passive programs is 2,700, which is roughly 9 people a day. So do we have an underutilized library? Does the space make sense for what we're using it for? At some point, we're gonna have to look at City Hall. We got some other buildings and stuff. And does it make sense to have the library there still? Or would it make sense in a different location? And I'm just a discussion point, not trying to say that we're gonna move today or anything, but something to think about
I'm not
is.
ready to chain up the doors.
No, if we moved it out of there, it'd be a place, and my thought would be having City Hall back there and having that open for meeting rooms and maybe Parks and Rec over there and have everything over there. I think at one point it was maybe built for that purpose. And maybe there's some potential for Hillside.
There was, the Booze, remember the Booze? Do you remember that name, Ben Boo?
yeah, well,
And
they donated money.
they're the one that donate money, so before we got too big in our dreaming, we'd have to check on.
There was restrictions on that, but.
Yeah, I don't remember what they are either. I just know he was a friend of my dad, so my dad would be
That's with the library?
99.
See,
That's a lot,
there used to,
you know,
right next to the library, next to the railroad tracks, well, actually across the tracks, it's called Boo Lumber Company. And
okay.
you could get pictures of that from the newspaper, but that's where the Boo Lumber Company was. Very wealthy family, the Boo family.
Yeah, they still, like, I remember when they would come to town and visit, it was like little, it's just a good time. And he's very good at football too. They won the state championship that
Right,
year,
yeah, they were.
44.
Where do you think we'd find where these restrictions are?
I'm not saying there's restrictions. I'm just saying because it was a big portion was donated from the Boo family. A lot of times with endowments, they don't want you to just use up the endowment and then,
This is when the city moved over to
Yeah.
the other, to the old courthouse.
That would have been in
Yes, yeah,
2009-ish.
somewhere in that ballpark, yeah. Then the money was, and it was, the grant was that we had to do whatever,
and it was being almost as old as Dave.
I'd ask Lisa. I bet you she could
But
remember.
it was a big deal. I remember lots of hot dinners
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah, they did a lot of it.
just a lot of like hokey small town stuff to just stack that money up so that they could do this.
I think I missed the show. He might be good.
She,
Resources.
oh, yeah, she would know.
It got.
And I'm not saying there are restrictions. I just know that happened because the Boo family, finally, everyone was passing away and it was really important for them to leave a legacy here in town.
Because that was quite the upgrade, quite the remodel of
Yeah.
that facility from
Yeah.
what it used to look like from what I remember. Just
Yep.
Is there an expansion of the building too, or is it the
No.
same?
I think maybe a little bit though. I think they might have bumped it out.
They might have towards
I think,
Like the-
almost third of the patio.
I don't think they went on the outside, it was all
No, it
inside.
was all inside, okay.
just the old. Now I was big, so it may have seemed a little
Right.
bigger back then, but the old council chamber seemed very large from what I remember it being.
Well, it
And then
wasn't,
there was city offices, the library, and a council chamber, meeting room, council chambers, community room space, so it's.
I just remember when, like, from being a consumer, it was very awkward in there.
it was.
It was just awkward. Like, everybody was just in the same space all the time. You couldn't discuss anything.
Well, when you walked in the front door,
Private.
there was a rotunda area. There was,
Oh, I've heard, yeah, yeah.
and then there was a big tree and Chris Bloomquist took care of
Right.
that. Nobody else was allowed to touch
Yeah.
that tree or water. it.
Colleen,
Yeah.
Colleen.
Clean brown.
yeah, Brown.
I think we're getting a little bit into story time, but
Yeah.
the only reason I'm bringing it up is I remember growing up, you'd go into a library and there'd be hundreds of people in there. And now with computers and cell phones coming online, I think there's people that still go in there that don't have access to that stuff. But these numbers are a little bit different than the usage of 26,000 and different than those numbers. And are we gonna get to a point where we have a very expensive utilities and maintenance and upkeep for a building that's not really getting a lot of traffic? And maybe keeping them there for 20 more years makes sense. But at some point, I'm wondering if the usage doesn't make sense for why we're having a library there.
One thing they mentioned at our library meeting too was the cuts they're expecting
Yeah.
for this next coming year, which may make us look at, are the doors open 6 days a week? Cause that's staffing, the staffing wages, the utilities, the,
And does the facility size make sense at that point too? And again, just discussion,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the library is indispensable in my opinion. I mean, you have to have. I bet
Even
areas,
night.
areas of my life where I was plenty broke and I didn't have internet at home and
Yeah.
I didn't have TV at home and I would
Yep.
go rent DVDs from the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, indispensable, but is
yeah.
the belts are tightening for everything.
With the,
So-
unfortunately, the interlibrary loans, like the MinLink, which is what I use all the time,
Mhm.
they're probably getting rid of that for the funding. So when my books usually come from, Cato and stuff, but they ship them to me and I pick them up in Mora and
But
they're gonna
Yeah.
to
see.
your point, I could see this being a good opportunity to discuss, to steal from Chief Miller, shits and coconuts, what makes sense where.
Hey, it would be an interesting thought to consolidate out most of our stuff other than public works into that spot. I don't know if the other buildings, if this building would work for the library, or if you ever looked at a different location for the liquor store. I don't know if the liquor store building would make sense, but I think that building where the library is was originally set up for the council or city hall, correct?
Oh, yeah. That was, when you walked in that rotunda area, you walk around, to the left was the city offices. They weren't that large.
Mhm.
The meeting room, the biggest meeting room was probably a hair smaller than this one. And then there was the mayor's office, the clerk's office, and, well, no, treasurer's office, then the clerk's office. And then straight in, when you come in the door, there was another, it was a wide, long office, and that's where I was, and Harvey, and who else? There was three of us in there.
Trotney maybe.
Rodney was in there too, yeah. And then to the right was the council chambers, and then that was. There was, you could probably get as many as we got in the room that
Yeah,
was there now.
That's my,
It's set up different,
Yep.
it was set up
And it
different.
was always set up.
Then there was a kitchen, yeah, then, yeah. and-
not so much, the
There
chairs.
was a big high
folding
desk,
chairs.
there was a high big desk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was all straight, there was, the council didn't go like this or anything, it was just this.
Mhm. I remember sitting there
And then
when,
the kitchen was to the right, and it wasn't very big.
Dorcosaurus.
And then you went a little more to the right, and that was the library, and that was pretty much where they have the bathroom, the kitchen, and the present meeting room. That was the library.
Yeah.
The bathrooms have never changed.
Right.
They've always been.
It's like when you go in the women's, it's about a foot up the ground. You're like, whoa. Have you went to that bathroom yet? Yeah.
But I haven't noticed there's a,
Well, maybe I keep picking the stall that's the children's stall or something. 'Cause I'm like,
Maybe it's just one of those things for the next library committee, just I know nobody's gonna wanna necessarily move. Can we just look at the numbers and see if the location and the space still makes sense for them with what they're looking at for possible cuts? Does it still make sense for them? I think at some point we're gonna get a couple of people in a pretty big building, and it does cost money to keep those doors open from the city standpoint, so.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with their library, like you know, I believe they're indispensable. But the feel at our library is traditional library, you know, it's not that quiet. Where the feel at Cambridge is more of a community space. And I don't know I don't know how, like you said, it's just different organizations using it all the time that make it.
What drives that, or what makes
Yeah.
that, what could we do to? I hate to talk about spending money now all of a sudden, but then we add on to that facility and keep the library and sustainably keep the library, give them enough space for what they need, add city offices in there with enough space for, as if one shrinks or one grows, we can kind of borrow back and forth, and it's still a.
We don't wouldn't have my room to the east. You got the road there. The road is it. The rest of it's railroad property.
And I also thought when that big conference room went in the fire hall, for some reason I thought part of that was for community use, and then it never happened.
I checked on this and what it is, the law has changed where the locks to where the equipment is, where the fire trucks and stuff are. There has to be some sort of passive lock device in there. And I'm not exactly sure. It sounds pretty expensive, and because of the catwalks and stuff in the other room, that's why it hasn't been able to be used, because that stuff is always.
Well, you can pass through the bathrooms too and stuff with that.
Right.
Well, I saw the little cupola thing up there, the big eye. I think we should have our meetings up there.
Fire hall?
To the bottle shop, I mean, you get, where the bottle shop sits currently, if you pull those coolers out, that's a big building. It's just not a big building for a liquor store.
It is deceivingly big, and I think the liquor store needs some room for expansion. I like the idea of having buildings, even the library, and this building's nice just because it's handicap accessible without any elevators that we have to maintain.
No, but then you'd have the food bank at the library, same parking lot, which could be beneficial to many, potentially.
Well, there was talk about that back in the 90s about the liquor store moving in. And that was one of the ideas when they built the one out by the north of town. That if that one went really gangbusters and the other one dove to the basement as far as sales, and they would just transfer, and that would be the library.
They were up there for 2 years.
No, it was 5 years.
Oh,
But the council made a decision after the third or so, it was almost the end of the third year to close it. And the last 2 months there, 2 or 3 months, and Laura, you gotta go to Laura and ask this information, but they finally started turning a profit. The problem with it was there was no anchor up there to draw people in. I mean, who's gonna, it wasn't a big thing coming off the freeway, but there was nothing to draw people. There was no Walmart. There was no 80s. There was nothing there.
Yep.
And the mall was empty pretty much. I don't know if anybody else was there.
They were early adapters to that exit, and they didn't wait, because the most important thing after early adapter is the second.
Right.
The second, just like
We
you
were
say,
the
just
anchor.
one more.
We were the
Yeah.
anchor to that. And the council at that time, and Frank Loja could tell you about this because he was on it. He was again, it was kind of he agreed to vote to open it, but he wanted to own it. He wanted to own a building up there. And
They were renting.
they wanted to lease. They wanted to try it to lease. And of course, the lease was 55,500 or something, I think a month. And it
Right,
took all the profits. And of course, after they had a lot of money to stick into it, coolers and everything else.
I think there might be some possibilities out there, but I only brought this up because I didn't want no, we're not gonna do it. I just wanted people to kind of just eat the information and think about it and talk in the committees and see what everybody thought.
We did brush up against it, like the use of the library, the hours, not necessarily moving it, but just that you gotta follow the money and react to it. You can't just pretend it's not happening.
right.
We're gonna have to get creative a lot of ways. And I have a feeling that this is one of the ways that we're gonna have to get creative. Budget passed last night, but I haven't seen all of
I
it.
know, I read that today. I'm like, there's nothing.
Yeah.
We
I
got the-
already know that.
I watched a lot of it on TV, boy, there was a lot of fighting going on.
I
We
know
got the
that
notice that get prepared to not have a job.
for the state, the 20% from cannabis that was supposed to go back to local government got clawed back, so we don't have that coming in yet.
And I heard they're raising the taxes on that too? Yeah.
From 10 to 15%. I digress.
How does North Branch do it with 2 liquor stores?
One's not a uni though, right? It's privately owned.
Private.
I thought there's 3 of them up there now.
So where's the third? There's one
There's
by,
one in the mall next to Don Julio, or down from Don
I
Julio's.
thought that was the Muni.
I think
That's a Muni, but the one down across from, across there,
Sidetracking a little bit from now we're talking about liquor store agreements, but maybe locations for liquor stores might be a different session or possibly a closed session.
well, my point was, how do they do it with 2? Because we couldn't do it, but they have 2 that are active right now. There is 3 liquor stores. There's one going into the mall, and there's one next to Don Julio's, about 2
Yep.
doors down.
Yes.
And then there's one next to the Holiday on the other side of the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And them are the 2 that one and the one in the
How
mall.
did I miss that?
So 2 are muni?
Okay.
I did
I
not
do
know that.
think that would be a good agenda topic.
I agree.
Bottle shop.
I do get some future ideas on that, but I think if it's property related, we can add that in a closed session, if it's negotiations.
Especially with property, we don't want it.
Well, Foster owns where we could do it. Right behind the dentist's office down where we are, down, I mean, that whole thing at the end of 8th, down to the, what? Like that,
All right, we'll add that to an agenda item.
different with Culvers there.
I wanted
You
to,
just made me write Culvers.
Just saying.
see that, how I was quiet, like that.
He said Culvers and I started writing Culver.
We move on to,
Any other issues with,
4.1, do we have anything else for 4.1?
Are you finding anything that might be on the horizon for us?
as in this topic to bring back?
Old agreements coming back for us.
Um,
Are we good with Hilltop and everything?
well.
No.
What's up with Hilltop?
Can we talk about my ideas or should we not?
I need to go back to work, so perhaps if we,
Let's talk about SEH.
Okay,
yeah,
So,
Okay.
so
let's do,
4.2 was, Greg had come before council to go out for the bids, and we had a neighbor who owned the property saying that we needed to have easements. So Gina did have me look, because thought that council had approved this, but council directed us to verify we could proceed. So we do not need to obtain any easements. We are good to go. So therefore, Greg, timeline wise, he's needing this to be approved so we can get the bids out or put, post for the bids. Yeah.
we're still good with spending this out of the budget. I know it was kind of painful for Nicole last week, so.
I appreciate that she's pained by this, but
It's out of the enterprise funds.
yes,
It's
correct.
not out of any.
And the fact that it affects, like, should something happen, It would be detrimental.
There's been conversations or about that fire that was up there as it was
I,
right on the ragged edge of.
They were
It's
trapped.
Not
I
being
mean,
okay.
Yeah.
the family was trapped in there with no shoes and blah, blah. They were at the mercy of their neighbors for, many hours. So they just ran out.
So we're looking for an approval for SEH to request bids for this project.
I'll make that motion.
second,
Kyle. Second, Dave. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. I would be adjourned, so someone would like to make a motion to adjourn, or if we want to swing back and talk more about 4-1, or are we done?
I'll make a motion to adjourn and if
What paragraph?
there's anything, yeah, okay, thank you. If there's anything that I need to know, just give me a call, send a smoke signal. Post it all over Facebook.
Especially communication.
Okay, right, we've got a motion to adjourn by Gina, second by Kyle, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
I didn't say it's not. All right, I appreciate you guys letting me pop in and out. That's great.
No, thanks for being here.
Thank you for making it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Dave.
I didn't do nothing. I just sat here and Siri talked to you. What